Cheers, guys. Epix 911. Welcome to the Sunday, April 30th, 2017 edition of VR News. Gonna start with Chinese company based in Shenzhen, Tencent. These guys have been talking about wanting to get into virtual reality for a few years now. This article comes from ft.com, and in the article, they state that Tencent is looking to enter the virtual reality market with their own device. Now, I was able to find talk about desire to get into virtual reality as early as late 2014, early 2015. Now, for those who don't know, Tencent is a huge company. Market value, $280 billion. They're almost the 10th largest by that stat in the world. Samsung overtook them though, but they are still comfortably in the top 20. So they're huge. And their portfolio literally tentacles into all kinds of areas: social media, e-commerce, web portals, mobile games. So they have a lot of the resume to be able to convincingly enter virtual reality. The only thing I wasn't really able to see was the hardware side. And you know what? They could probably do that partnering with one of many phone option type or small electronics companies in that region. Now, statistically in the article, they talk about a stat from Goldman Sachs, who say that currently China accounts for 1/3 of global virtual reality sales. And that by 2021, Asia as a region is going to account for 45% of the VR market. Now, I bring that up because it ties into where they may be going. The first assumption would be, you know what? We know there's kind of a monopoly in China really for PC virtual reality currently, and that's the HTC Vive, because Facebook is banned there. And I know one of the viewers, Paper Clown, he's mentioned that before in the past, that without them having a foothold there, there's effectively no competition. So they could enter there. They could be the Rift to the Vive in China. Then, of course, after that, you've got the mobility, and that's where these statistics mostly are coming from. The literal metric crap ton of mobile VR solutions, the really, really cheap Google Cardboard-like options. So interesting to see. Watch this unfold. Hopefully we find out this year, just out of curiosity. Doesn't mean it's something I'm going to be interested in. I'm interested in the sense that it's a huge market, and I'd love to see how Tencent approaches that market. Next up, this is an article from Venturebeat, and I love the headline on this. Sorry, Zuck. AR and VR won't replace TVs or phones. And this has to do with Mark Zuckerberg's F8 speech, where he talked about his vision of a time when AR devices and VR devices are going to be the substitute for phones, mobile phones, and TVs. The ability to project anywhere in your usable space a massive virtual TV screen. He sees that replacing physical TVs. I can kind of see a convergence at some time in the future. I don't really think it's necessarily going to be a replacement. I think they're just going to meet somewhere. That's kind of my look on it. Well, Venturebeat countered it outright using examples like 3D TV, and they also talked about slow VR sales, but their biggest counter to Mark's statement was the utter disaster of Google Glass. Obviously, a clear reference to the fact that even if you were to have a device as light as a pair of glasses, for people not used to that, it won't be an acceptable substitute to watch TV or movies that way. So another one of those things we're going to have to see. But again, my feeling, it will likely converge at some point. I don't see it as a question of one replacing the other, but of course I could be wrong. Next up, a story we first talked about back in October. I've linked the original YouTube video where I talk about this. This is an Indian movie called Baahubali. It's a sequel to, or Baahubali 2, a sequel to the first movie, which was a massive hit in India. Now, Bollywood and the southern version of that, they're huge. They don't typically have the genres like Hollywood films. They are pretty formulaic, 90-95% kind of following the same formula. And hits there, while numerous, tend to not hit the hundreds of millions of dollars. It's tens of millions, but it's still huge. And what made this story so interesting is the VR tie-in for Baahubali 2. There was a series of VR experience, the biggest, which was kind of a making of documentary. And that was set up to view in kiosks and theaters across India. And I mention this because, like China, India is not just an emerging powerhouse, but they have a pretty respectable middle class. Yeah, the buying power is a little bit different, but 267 million of the 1.3 billion are considered middle class. Still peanuts when you look at the 1.3 billion as a whole, but you compare that to some Western countries' populations. Look at the US with its 320 million. Well, then that becomes a pretty intimidating figure. And the beauty there is, while it might not be that popular here, if virtual reality is going to survive, it can't just be mainstream in one or two regions of the world. It has to be mainstream globally. I firmly believe that. At least in a majority of continents, it's got to be a technology people want and desire. And from a marketing point of view, I think it's brilliant. The movie launched a couple of days ago, doing really, really well in the box office. The kiosks for the VR experience still set up and will be for the entire run of the movie. So just a fantastic way to market not just the movie, but virtual reality in India. This next story, a bit of an artsy one, but having an artsy daughter and being a fan of the arts myself, I like this article from Road to VR. I've also linked the YouTube video. So the artist here is Anna Zhilyaeva. And what she's done is created what she calls mixed reality art. And this comes about because of Tilt Brush's features. In fact, one of the features that they updated within the last 2 updates where you can import objects, drawings, etc. So she imports a painting of hers, and then using the HTC Vive and Tilt Brush, she's able to artificially, in a VR sense, expand the canvas of her original piece. And it looks freaking amazing. So you've got this original picture and then her just literally painting off the boundaries. So I've included the link for that. Check that out. She's also got some really impressive. She's got a Native American, looks like a chief in ceremonial headdress. Looks freaking awesome. Go check that out. Like I said, her YouTube channel linked below. And then this last story, just from a sports point of view, we've talked about the tutorial and training aspects of VR, but here is a perfect example of exactly such a program actually being used already and pretty indispensable to those teams using it in not just one major league, but basically all of North America's major leagues. So we've got the NBA, we've got Major League Baseball, NHL, and NFL, among others, the WNBA as well, all have teams using a product called STRIVR. And STRIVR is basically a training program, and their claim is that it improves reaction time, pattern recognition, and decision-making in the real world. In fact, again, their claim, recollection for those who are going through the training of key concepts by 30%, which is huge. Now, I stumbled on this looking some hockey articles. Where did I find this? The WashingtonPost.com. So reading about the Washington Capitals, an NHL team, surprise, surprise, Canadian, right? Hockey, and came across this. So the owner there, Ted Leonsis, he owns a bunch of major league teams in Washington, D.C. All of his teams are using this. And leagues tend to be pretty copycat from team to team. If there's a new and innovative way, you know, whether it's interpreting stats, and of course, right now I forget the name for that, but whatever new method comes along, other teams start copycatting, and eventually it becomes an accepted method. Where this gets a little interesting is Sally Jenkins. She's the columnist for the Washington Post. There's a video here as well of her trying it, and she's pretty damn impressed at the level of immersion. It's an Oculus Rift that she's using. But her feeling that this could replace the sports playbook, which is a long-standing manual, traditional piece of a coach/manager's arsenal. Is it? I think right now and the near future, it's probably complementary alongside. But I suppose there is a possibility one day it could, in fact, replace that. The players love it and do feel that they are getting added benefit from using that, as do the coaches and the owners for most of the teams that the Washington Post reached out to. So very cool. Link for that in the description below, as well as the software company STRIVR. If you want to check that out, I've included their link as well. All right, guys, that is it for the Sunday. My last week with my current employer. 5 more days of chaos and moving and packing. Soon. 3 weeks. Soon. Cheers, guys.